Well, thank you, Harris. We start with a Fox News alert. ISIS on the verge of a potential huge victory, capturing the key town of Kobani at the border between Syria and Turkey. As U.S. and coalition warplanes pound terrorist targets there, is Kobani a turning point in the battle against evil? This is happening now.
Can the fiercest airstrikes of this campaign so far save a key Syrian town from ISIS control? With the black flag of terror already flying over Kobani, new questions on whether the president's Syria strategy is hitting a major roadblock. Also,
we're just waiting for the facts right now. Just waiting to see, make sure he's okay, get everything before he starts saying that, he has a bullet.
A sheriff's deputy who reportedly entered the Texas apartment where an Ebola victim stayed before his death is now ill. We are waiting for test results. Plus,
we knew the cats were around. We just never knew that they were coming so close.
A prowler on the loose. This one has fangs, where a car-pouncing mountain lion has a community on edge.
I'm a little concerned for my dogs, actually. I have a littler dog that would be like a Scooby Snoo.
It's all happening now.
But first, we start with our top story, battling the radical Islamic terrorists in Syria. We're told now that ISIS capturing a large part of Kobani. That's that key town that's right on the Turkish-Syria border. Welcome to Happening Now. I'm Eric Shawn, in for John Scott.
And I'm Shannon Bream, for Jenna Lee. American and allied warplanes pounding ISIS camps, buildings, and vehicles in the most intense airstrikes of this campaign. ISIS terrorists may now control as much as 60% of Kobani, according to our Fox News team on the ground, and could take it over completely, sparking another bloodbath within days. While most analysts and military leaders agree the battle against ISIS cannot be won solely from the air.
Doug McKelway is the very latest on the U.S. strategy, live from the Pentagon, where they do expect Kobani to potentially fall. Hi, Doug.
Hi, Eric. As ISIS continues to make advances on this northern city of Kobani, the U.S. finally began responding with airstrikes just within the past 24 hours. U.S. Central Command reports that a B-1 bomber as well as fighter aircraft and unmanned drones launched 5 strikes just south of Kobani. The strikes damaged an ISIS training camp. They destroyed a support building for ISIS and destroyed 2 vehicles, as well as killed several ISIS fighters. CENTCOM believes that the Kurdish militia continue to control most of the city and are holding out against ISIS, at least thus far. A day after the president visited the Pentagon for meetings with the Joint Chiefs of Staff, there is no sign of his deviating from his strategy of no boots on the ground, even while critics increase pressure on him to do just that.
We're 2 months now of airstrikes. The president's strategy clearly isn't working. ISIL continues to grow, gobble up more territory from Baghdad to Kobani.
I think we've forgotten, and I think we need to keep reminding people that this is going to be a long, difficult struggle. It's not going to be solved through military power alone. And as dramatic as airstrikes can be, and as effective on the battlefield as they can be, they're not the solution here.
The U.S. is also putting tremendous pressure on Turkey to put some of its own boots on the ground, but Turkey at this point is not cooperating. Turkey is resisting. It wants the United States to provide more support to rebels who are trying to overthrow President Assad of Syria. It wants a no-fly zone to keep Assad's air force on the ground, and it also wants a buffer zone along the Syria-Turkish border to stem the tremendous flow of refugees who are flowing north. One unintended consequence of the U.S. air campaign, the New York Times is reporting that the airstrikes on ISIS has allowed President Assad to deviate his force away from ISIS to the moderate rebels, the very same people that the United States is trying to arm. Part of the complexity of this hugely complex issue in Syria and in Iraq against ISIS. Eric, back to you.
Yeah, Doug, it is hugely complex, and in just 10 minutes from now, we're going to hear directly from the chairman of the Kurdistan National Assembly on what they think we should do. Thank you, Doug. Shannon?
Well, this morning on Happening Now, our military analyst, Lieutenant Colonel Bill Cowan, took great issue with President Obama's leadership on ISIS, saying, quote, the U.S. will look feckless as ever when Kobani falls to the extremists of ISIS. Is that an accurate assessment of how the White House is dealing with such a dire terrorist threat? Well, let's talk about it with Chris Wallace, the anchor of Fox News Sunday. Chris, great to see you.
Good to be with you, Shannon.
All right, so you and I have covered Washington. We know what it's like when you hear, trickles from different portions of the administration. And it seems like we're hearing from the Pentagon, as in Doug McKelway's report there, talking about Rear Admiral Kirby saying, well, airstrikes, we admit, our assessment, that's not going to get it done. Are you sensing a split between the military community and the administration formal at this point?
Well, there has been a difference of opinion for some period of time. People in the Pentagon have said that they believe that you need ground forces, not 100,000 U.S. troops, not another Iraq invasion, but you're going to need at least some troops in a forward position, much more so in Iraq than in Syria, to help, because we don't have any ground forces to aid in Syria at this point. I think you can overstate the impact of Kobani. I mean, let's face it, most of us never heard of this town a week ago, and if it falls, it doesn't make ISIS either a bigger or smaller threat to the United States and to the U.S. homeland. On the other hand, I think that it points out a lot of the problems with the president's policies, the fact that there aren't ground troops, the fact that we haven't gotten together with Turkey. Turkey is right across the border. I mean, they can look from Turkish territory and see the bombardment of Kobani right now, and they could go over there, but the president hasn't been able to agree with Turkish officials as to whether or not we're also going to go after the Assad regime, which is what the Turks want. So I think it's a test case that shows problems with the president's policies. Whether or not Kobani falls or not, while obviously of tremendous interest to the Kurds, probably does not directly affect U.S. national security.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about our relationship with Turkish officials. We know there's been an apology involving the vice president, but what do you make of our president's working relationship with Erdogan?
Well, look, they have a very different point of view. Turkey, first of all, is upset about the fact that hundreds of thousands of refugees are coming across the border. They don't want the southern part of their country swamped by that. They would very much like to see Assad displaced. They want to see us join the war. A lot of people will argue, and have argued for years, that we should have joined that war, but at this point, President Obama does not feel that that's what the fight we want to take on, that he wants to restrict it to ISIS. So obviously there's a tremendous difference of opinion, and in fact U.S. officials are quite upset with Erdogan, the president of Turkey, and his policies, saying that this is not the way another fellow member of NATO should react as when they have ground forces within a few hundred yards of Kobani and are doing nothing about what's going on there.
What do you make of the president as all of this is playing out and the administration having to make very difficult judgment calls and decisions, taking some pretty stiff incoming criticism from former Secretary of Defense, CIA Director Leon Panetta?
Well, I think that's a big deal. Not so much in terms of, the impact it's going to have on the president's political future. He's not running again. I don't think it'll have a big impact on the midterm elections, but it'll certainly have an impact on Obama's legacy. And here you have the man that Obama chose to be first the CIA director and then to be the Secretary of Defense, saying that the president, his ideological, his political reasons, he went against the top advice of his national security advisors when it came to keeping a residual force of U.S. troops in Iraq, and despite what the president says, he says we could have kept them there if we'd pushed harder, and the White House wanted to get out of Iraq. He also says that the president went against the top advice of his national security advisors when it came to arming the rebels. Again, that's strong stuff, and that is something that is going to figure into the Obama legacy when you have people like Robert Gates, to a more limited degree Hillary Clinton, and now Leon Panetta, all talking about what they think were very bad decisions by this president.
Yeah, it adds up. All right, Chris, thank you for making time for us today. Good to see you.
You bet. My pleasure.
And of course, join Chris Wallace for Fox News Sunday. Among the topics this week, the midterms, less than a month away. He's going to debate with Karl Rove, architect of both Bush presidential campaigns, and Democratic strategist, you know him, you love him, Joe Trippi. Check your local listings Sunday morning, and you can also tune into Fox News Channel 2 o'clock and 6 o'clock Eastern Time. Eric?
Well, Shannon, we also want to hear from you as we get closer to the midterms. What races are you watching most closely? You know, our live chat, it's up and running right now. All you got to do is go to foxnews.com/happeningnow, click on America's Asking, and you can join the conversations about those tightly contested races across the country and which ones you think how they'll tip.